We are facing the risen sun of a new day begun. Today is Indigenous Peoples Day. It is no longer Columbus Day like it used to be. Speaking of Christopher Columbus, did you know that new DNA study has proven that Christopher Columbus was part of the European Jewish community? Truth crushed to the earth will rise again. William Cullen Bryant. Times change. You are viewing Issues and Answers on the WCEG Network. I am your host to enlighten your perspectives about our environment, our social political. Our podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, and JioSaavn, which is from India, platforms. All of our programs are archived on YouTube and can be viewed by anyone at any time. Please understand that the topics and opinions on Issues and Answers are those of the host and my illustrious guest, and not the WCEG Network. So let's get moving on this installment of Issues and Answers. But first, I'd like to remind you all that today we are on the eve of general election season. Tomorrow, October 15th, early voting begins in Georgia. Early voting ends on November 1st. Some states have already begun early voting. You may vote between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. each weekday and Saturday. Election day is November 5th. If you have been lazy or irresponsible, it's too late to register to your location. You may access it via computer at let's see if you're here in Georgia, voter, VOTER, .net /ACTI VOTE. That's voter, VOTER .net /ACTI VOTE. Remember, people have died to secure and to protect your right to vote. Do not allow sacrifices to be in vain. Vote. Those votes matter. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some spectacular guests today that I'm sure will be enlightening to all of you, no matter what walk of life you're in, no matter what your religion is, no matter where you live. These people are spectacular. First, I'd like to introduce to you Mrs. Marie Hardy, who is the author of But God. And we're giving you access information on that. And also Mr. Kwuam Adams, who is the CEO, originator of Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, all that.
And we'll get into information about accessing them later on, because that's also important. But just as to prepare our audience and prepare our guests, let you know, this past summer, I was engaged in the conversation with Mr. Joe Hardy. And we talked about 15 or 20 minutes. The majority of that conversation was about his wife, our guest, Ms. Marie Hardy. And a few other people spoke about her also. And I can only say that people speak about her with the reverence that's usually reserved for what we would consider high religious figures, like the Pope or Martin Luther King, or someone on that level. There's a degree of reverence that I've never heard, honestly, and I'm not exaggerating, that I've never heard people speak about with any person who preaches the gospel. I was very much impressed by Lindsay Callahan and Winnie Stark at the book signing event this weekend, and their testimony. And it wasn't just a testimony. Well, let me put it this way. Their testimony was as much about their what her effect on their lives as it was about her effect on their bodies. Uh, there was all types of healing going on, all types of learning going on. And we'll get more into that. I sound like a book salesman. I'm not that. That's what Kwuam is here for. But but I'd like to begin with you, Mrs. Marie Hardy. Uh, uh, how how did all this come to be with you as far as your book goes, writing this, taking on
Well,
the
Mr.
task of
Norman,
writing your
first
book?
of all, thank you so much for inviting Kwuam and I to join you. I've known you a few years now, and I have found you and your wife to be honorable people as well. So I thank you for the invitation. This book came about, there was a particular day that I was praying before the Lord, and I was concerned because I'm 60. Well, when I did the prayer, I was 60. And I said, well, God, most of my life I've lived, and I just want some kind of legacy. And I said, you've not really given me something of my own to call my own, if you will, to leave behind. I want when I leave that my name would be out there, to not to just be out there, but to be like a Catherine Kuhlman, where her advice is still being taken, it's still running, and people are still learning from that. And so it was one of those heart-wrenching prayers that I had with God, with tears and all. And the same night, I kid you not, the same night, Kwuam Adams was messing around on the computer as well. It was kind of late, and he posted something about what is your talent, to not just me, but to several people. And I didn't answer. I didn't say anything. And he sent me a message through Messenger saying, well, Miss Marie, you have so much wisdom and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Have you ever considered writing a book? And so I wrote him back and I said, yes, I have. And he said, well, what happened? I said, well, there's been a book in my heart for over 30 years. I had the title, I had everything. And he said, well, what happened? I said, well, it was so much drama and trauma, and didn't want to expose people for their actions. I said, so I just stopped. I just stopped. And he said, well, there's a way that we can, I can help you work around it and blah, blah, blah. And he said, let's talk. Well, what he didn't know about me was when you say something to me, I follow up. And I was like, okay, well, let's meet on this day. And we met, I think it was that weekend. And Kwuam has a huge imagination, huge. And so as we began to dialogue and he began to show the magnitude of how the book could be written, I couldn't even get past just the writing, if you will.
Mhm.
But just that night, we decided, okay, I asked my husband for his blessing, if he was okay with me writing the book, and my husband gave me his blessing. And the three of us just decided that night, let's go for it. And um and I went for it, and I started getting myself ready. And I think midweek, that next week, I started writing. And Kwuam felt he kept thinking that he had to push me, and he would do this and he would do that. And I was just writing. I had an anointing. That's the only way I can explain it to people because, Mr. Norman, I wrote that book in a little over 3 months. That normally does not happen. But when I tell people that God gave me an anointing, a download, that I literally would write 7 to 8 hours a day. And we're talking about now I'm 61, and so the story begins from the very beginning. So the Lord just reminded me of the things that happened, like just one thing after the other. Like it just was not hard because it was just the season that God wanted me to write. And because it was the season, because it was the right timing, because it was the right connection, having Kwuam as the leader and helping me to do it, but also having the leadership of our pastors. We have new pastors into the church, and the bishop came in and started speaking life into the church and started speaking blessings and started speaking some things to me. And I took it personally. So between all of that, God had really just lined everyone and everything up for such a time as this. And that's how it began, just like that. And we ran with it, and that's how it is.
Well, that's just part of the story because Kwuam, your journey and how you guys sort of got together. I think on the book side, you took us back to your childhood and that story and brought it right up. And I think our audience would really like to hear that story because it brings all this together and makes it make so much sense.
Well, the name of the my company / ministry is called Brooklyn Bridge Media, and there's a reason why I call it that. And what the company is what God's called me to do is find people that have a gifting, talent, ability, and something to say to the world for the gospel, and help them bridge reality. And it got me of abilities and a lot of knowledge and how to do that. And so the reason why it was called Brooklyn Bridge is because I was a little kid. The earliest memory that I have of my life is 4 years old. We're crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. I grew up in New York, and we're crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, coming from Queens back to Brooklyn. We were in the back seat at 4 years old, and I felt like I just needed Jesus. And I knew about the Lord because my mom had told us about it, as long as I can remember. But I just felt like I needed the Lord in my heart. And so I leaned up and I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "Mommy, I think I need Jesus at 40." And so I knew that I needed to ask him into my heart. And so I sat back and did that. And from then on, so the symbolic, my transition into who I would be for the rest of my life and eternity happened on the Brooklyn Bridge. And so to replicate that as I got older, replicate that journey of transitioning from what you were to what you are supposed to be. That's what it's symbolic of. And so, I had been going to the church for a while and knew Miss Marie, we would talk here and there and, admired her from afar and was like, man, this woman is a woman of God, and her husband, Joe, and we would talk here and there, kind of an acquaintance kind of a thing. And, I just put that little post out there on Facebook and, because I'm always trying to encourage people to go after what God has put in their heart to do, to make a difference for the Lord with their giftings. And so I was putting a post out there, and then something told me to just, private message her, and just like she said. And so fast forward, I'm at her house, we're talking about it. And one of the giftings, and she'll tell you this, is that I start getting more excited about your dreams than my own. I start getting like, if I feel like we're connected and God wants us to work together, I start getting ideas and like, we can do this and we can do that. And I'm expanding your dream into bigger than what you think it could be. So when we did our book release, this past weekend, I wanted it to be grand. I wanted it to be not like what anybody has seen before. Not because we want to be better than anyone else, but because we want, number one, give God most excellence, and number two, it matches the depth of the story. You know, as dark as things were, we need to make it just as brighter, and we need to make things attractive to the world to come and see what we got going on. So that's kind of the long and short of it. You know, I'm attracted to bringing people from vision to reality, because that's what happened for me as a little boy at 4 years old.
The book looks like, whoops, I got mine.
There you go.
Yeah. I'll be showing that again. But one thing that I noticed at this book release party was I thought that my wife and I would be different, but we weren't. Most people were buying more than one
Yes.
copy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that had to be you. I don't know whether you got writer's cramp at the end of the signing, but that was awesome to see. Both of you said something that I like to highlight on. Mrs. Hardy, you somewhere along the line, well, first of all, our motto here at this station is we speak life into the community. That's our station motto. And I had to do a double take, uh, Marie, when you said that going back to your time in New York, you're a native New Yorker, that you had never had anyone speak life over you, um, and that's part of the your journey from trauma to triumph. And I'd like to, for you to speak a little bit about that, because this begins in your childhood, which was not a standard or normal childhood.
Well, that is correct, Mr. Norman. I have not had the normal childhood. And I did not have anyone to speak life into me, if you will. Didn't have, I had an adoptive father, but he was not a Christian, and there were other issues. Um, and so I guess I found my nation, if you will. And it was that the Lord strategically placed people into my life that were able to start speaking life unto me. But prior to that, it was just going through the motions, just existing, if you will. Um, and so it puts you into a quagmire, if you will, because I didn't have a lot of positives. So the negatives in my mind caused me to not want to even want to live, to not to give too much away from the book, but to not to want to be alive anymore. And so it was a hard life. So when I did get saved, I I allowed myself to receive the blessings, if you will, from those whom God sent. And even now, I find myself like when I meet people, particularly men who have experienced great things in life, and I look up to them, I ask them even now to speak a blessing over me, to pray over me, sometimes even before they die, because before someone dies, that's the greatest time that, you could hear the burden of their heart. And
Mhm.
so, um, so as a result of that, I wanted to become that. I wanted to become that person that can speak life into others. And that's why I am the way I am. That's why I love to evangelize. That's why I love when I see situations, when I see marriages in trouble, when I see people in trouble, the first thing that I want to do is I want to help them, to speak life into them, to let them know that you can overcome, you can make it, because there is a God that helped me, and because he helped me, he certainly can help them.
You know, I'm going to go back and refer a lot back to the book release night because there's just so much. But as both you and Kwuam had mentioned about how this whole thing about the book got together, and you had the idea in your head, probably didn't know how to get it together. You get a little inspired by Kwuam. It's I sort of searched for biblical analogies, and I'm going back to the prophet who said he didn't know how to go out and speak to the masses. He didn't know what to say, and God said, I'm going to put the words in your mouth for you to say. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And so it puts you, both of you, in light in the light of being special conduits for God to let his work go out through you to reach not just 2 or 3 or 400 people in your church, but perhaps to thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people. How does that make you feel?
Mr. Norman, I I don't have the words. Um, because I don't feel as if like, wow, look at the difference I'm making, like a wow, I've achieved something. I don't feel any of that. If God can use that book to put it out there in the world to help people. There are so many Christians that are broken. They're broken. And one of the things that I realized years ago was God, sometimes when I'm speaking to a person, my eyes are connected to their eyes because the Bible says that the eyes are the window to the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this tendency as Christians to put on the church face, if you will, that when you ask someone, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm blessed and I'm highly favored.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, they're dying on the inside. And I've been able to look at people and to see you're blessed by God, but you're not happy. You're stuck somewhere. You're
Mm-hmm.
broken, And in my mantra with this book is I want people to know that because you see, a lot of people have said that I was very secretive. People have been wanting to know who this Marie Hardy was for many, many years. People would ask me questions and I would give them little snippets, but I never gave them all the story. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that's why I believe it's God that didn't allow me to give them the whole story so they could read the whole story. So I feel as if this book can reach the multitude that are broken, that have lost hope in church. There are so many people that's been hurt by church people, and because of that, they are angry at God, and they're just in a state where they just need a little push. And I just want to be that one with that book to give them the push to let them know there's life. There's so much more you can experience. You're not alone. That is the message, because people hide behind the pain because they think that if I tell someone I went through this, what is someone going to think about me? How are they going to feel about me? Well, when I started writing the book, one of the things was I said, God, there's some parts that I really don't want to say because they're shameful. And I felt
Mhm.
as if the Lord just wanted me to tell the story. Tell the story because it's not about you. Because in you telling the story, you will help to set the captives free. So my thinking is, yes, let it go out there, let it reach the millions and the billions, but let it help them. Let it help people to come to know this Lord Jesus Christ that helped to set me free, so whereby they can be free as well.
Well, I mean, you can jump right in here
Yeah,
if you like.
that's the whole point of our this partnership is that, you know, with our company, with the company sort of ministry thing, you know, I my whole goal is to work with people who are basically diamonds in the roughs for the kingdom, and who don't care about platinum records, who don't care about, you know, being on the New York's bestseller list. All that is great. All that's good and great, right? That those are peripherals, but they care more about fulfilling the purpose that God has planted in them. And maybe they've been overlooked. Maybe they haven't had the right resources. Maybe they have the gifting, but not the doors open to them or whatever. And that's my job, is to partner with them and help them get over that hump. But only for those who their concern is to please the Lord with their talent and their ability and their gift and their story, and affect others for the kingdom, like be able to speak that life into their communities. You know, the community could be their home, it could be their church, it could be their workplace, it could be their city, their town, you know, just like the motto says, to speak life into the community. And life comes from Christ. And so that's, you know, when I saw that heart on Miss Marie, I was like, yeah, this is, I didn't even have to worry about it or whatever. And like she said, you know, when you have that kind of an attitude already, then you don't have to be pushed. You don't have to be pulled to do it. You know, you are pushed and pulled by your purpose. And so you know, like she said, when we started, you know, I thought I was gonna have to be like, okay, Miss Marie, it's, you know, be her coach or whatever. And she was like, nah, I already got chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 done already. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was a very synergistic relationship from the very beginning, because we have the same goal, is to make his name known and to set the captives free, speaking life into other people. You know, in a lot of areas, when she was growing up, she didn't get a lot of life spoken into her. I had it from my mom growing up as a kid, but as an adult, I didn't have anybody, any kind of help, any kind of like people coming alongside me to help me use my talents. I had to push and open, learn all things on my own, by the Holy Spirit, of course. But so I want to turn around and speak that life into other people, speak life into people like Miss Marie. Like, no, you can do this. This is something you're supposed to do. You know, there's several times when, you know, we would have conversations about whether this part of the story should come out, or, you know, and I'm like, no, you need to do it. This is the thing that God has put in you to do, and he doesn't waste any parts of the story, and he's going to use it all. So, you know, she's speaking life through the book, and I'm speaking life to them from behind the scenes.
Well, I think that Kwuam, people listening to you now and your calm demeanor, and I remember how passionate, I put the notes here, you were at the book release, where you said, get activated, get activated,
Yes,
and let the Lord use you. I mean,
yes.
you didn't say it as calmly as I'm saying it right now. You had a little bit more zing in it
Yeah,
when
you could
said,
ask Miss Marie. I'm pretty passionate about
Yeah.
about this thing. Like I don't I try to remain calm and right and the right demeanor for the right platform.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like I said, when I find out somebody's desire and goal and they want to do something and I get connected in the spirit with them, then I get more excited and more passionate about their vision than they are. And so God
Yeah,
begins to download these ideas and I'm sort of like a coach, you know what I mean? But with a good amount of information that I can get to them. Like, I just God's given me knowledge about a lot of different areas, about music, about art, about writing and publishing books, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I get pretty passionate when the moment
mm-hmm.
calls for it.
uh, I reflect back on the fact that nobody gets here by themselves, and Miss Marie, I'm going to go back to you for a second here, because I think about the support that you've gotten from your husband Joe. Uh, he, I was telling my wife yesterday, or right after the event on Friday, that it is rare that a man will stand up in front of about 400 or 500 people and say over a microphone, "I love my wife." I mean, do you know how rare that is?
Yes. Yes,
Said
sir.
it, said it with a straight face, no joke, no, those people are saying, "Well, I love my wife, but I wish she would leave me
Flat
alone," or
footed.
something like that. No, there was nothing. I love my wife. And that's the kind of support that you need. I mean, he even said that, I mean, there were some parts of your life, even with your relationship with your husband, that weren't great or something to write home about. But the fact that you both at some point came to grips with it, persevered, and made it all right. And I mean, it wasn't just you of yourselves. When I think about how you guys, number one, first got together and then got back together, there's something special about that. Something very, very special. Something very rare. Uh, I have I hope I'm not talking too much here. I'm going to
No,
get you in, but
it's your show.
no, but you guys are an intricate part of it. But I found some things. I know you get emotional, but I don't want you to do that. I found some profound analogies and things that you said uh, at the event. Uh, you stated that at your church in New York, people thought you were crazy, and I guess you felt like an outsider. So you did have a friend here in Georgia, and that was probably part of the impetus that led you to come to Georgia. And I found that there is biblical justification for that. And I don't know whether you looked at that, but I looked up Mark 3, verse 20 to 21, where it says, "Then he comes into a house, and again a crowd gathers, so they couldn't even eat. When his family heard about this, they went out to take hold of him, but they were saying he's out of his mind." This is when he was in Nazareth, and,
Mm.
and he spoke at the synagogue, and these people said, "This guy is crazy. We need to like throw him over the cliff, get rid of him." Luke 4:28 to 30. Now all in the synagogue were filled with rage about hearing these things. Rising up, they drove him out of the town and brought him as far as the edge of the mountain on which their city had been built, in order to throw him off the cliff. But passing through the middle of them, he went on his way. Now, have you ever considered that the path that Jesus, our Savior, went through, and how there are some similarities, not precisely, nobody was going to throw you off a cliff or anything, but how the fact that in one environment where that you had become accustomed to, the people weren't ready for you. They weren't ready for you. And now you move 1,000 miles away to a place where people basically don't know you, and you find your mission.
Yes. First, let me say this. The church that I came from was a wonderful church. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It was the church I got saved in, and it was the only church that I joined in, and I had tremendous support from the people in the church. Where it went a little awry
Mm-hmm.
was when it got deep. And let me say this, and I maybe I shouldn't use the word awry. The people loved me. Let me put it that way. People in the church
Okay.
loved me. And when you love people, you don't like to see them suffer. And
Mm-hmm.
they watch me have one trauma after another, just trauma and trauma and pain and pain and pain. And it was so much agony the whole time. Like, so their humanness, because I want to put that out there, that it was their humanness for me, watching me go through the pain that that caused them to get to the place where they were like, um okay, something is wrong here, because after being apart from my husband for many years, um about 10 years, from being apart,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't date anyone. Um, they, I used to tell people, Mr. Norman, that I had a Joseph ministry, and they would say, "What is that ministry?" "There is no Joseph ministry." I said, "Oh, yes, there is a Joseph ministry." I said, "Joseph ran from Potiphar's wife, when she was trying to, so I had a running ministry. When I
Yeah.
saw men coming, I ran, because I never
Mm-hmm.
thought, the Bible said, be careful when you think you're strong. When you think you're strong, lest you fall, when you're strong, you
Mm-hmm.
fall. And I was very mindful of that. So I didn't allow myself to be put into those situations. So back to what you were saying. So in essence, when they saw me year after year after year, knowing my husband lived in another place, and I lived we lived about 45 minutes from each other. He was living his life, I was living my life, but in me living my life, I was getting stronger in God. I was in Bible school, I was in evangelism explosion, I was taking this course and that course, I was being mentored. And so getting all that knowledge, they saw that you're growing,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing his own thing. And so what's wrong with you? Why can't you see that there's an issue? Forget about it, move on, start over.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, that was not the instructions that God gave me. And again, they didn't speak of me as in a bad way, if you will, but the
Mm-hmm. Okay.
action of it all, you know,
Mm-hmm.
suggested. And there were a few who said, she's really like going off the deep end. Like, is she really
Mm-hmm.
from God?
Mm-hmm.
She's young in the Lord, she's missing the mark. And we're trying to tell her, the truth, and she's not listening. And a few of them just felt that I was rebellious, if you will.
Okay.
But I knew I had a mandate, like, you're not to divorce him. And it's not to say, Mr. Norman, that I that I followed the course, because there were many times I was like, God, I'm just done. I'm just, and then every time I got to that place, God would just strengthen me again. He would send somebody to speak life and encourage me, to tell me, keep fighting, keep fighting. And so it got to the point where not my husband, the Lord would tell me to do certain things concerning my husband. And they would say to me, what you're going to do? The Lord told you to do what? For instance, the Lord would tell me, okay, well, the next time you see him, you put your arms around him and you hug him. And they would find out, and they're like, you did what? Because we know that,
Mm,
they saw things. It's
okay.
not that they heard, they saw a lot of things. And there was a time he was in the hospital, he was hurt really, really bad. And this is that one time they just really thought I was off the deep
Mm,
end. He had gotten hurt badly, and take care of you. You feel free to come, to come stay with me. They were like, what?
mm,
What, what are you
mm.
saying? Do you remember what he said? But the one thing I used to and I had a couple of good friends that always reminded me, no matter what, forgive. You have to forgive. You have to walk in forgiveness. And so when I extended that olive branch, and they would question me, I would say, but riddle me this, is what I'm doing
Right.
Mhm.
unbiblical? That's when
Okay.
say, are we not living the Bible? Does
Mhm.
not the Bible tell us that we ought to love our enemies and to do good to those who despitefully use us? Who can argue with the word of God? And so then that's when you would hear the whispers. Yeah, she's,
Okay.
that kind of a thing. But I knew what my assignment was, and I knew that no matter what, I was going to do it. And so when the Lord did bring us back together, we just felt like we're not going to make it in New York, because we need a place where we can begin again, where people don't know us to
Okay.
judge us, if you
Mhm.
will. Yeah. So coming here to Georgia, the people saw this. We've never seen the likes of this type of person before. They wanted it. They wanted
Mhm.
the gifting that was in me.
There you go.
And but in the other place, okay, we don't want that because we don't
See,
know what that
and
is, if you will.
that's where I make my analogy. It's almost the same thing going from Nazareth to Capernaum.
Yes.
Uh, you began, there was a beautiful song, uh, young lady sang called You Found Me.
Yes.
Beautifully sung at the beginning of your book release event. I was walking to get it signed, and I opened up the book just to leaf through it as I was standing in line, and I came to page 13. And I think this encapsulates the whole book and a lot of what you're saying. And it says, I don't know why I experience so much pain in life, but maybe he chose me and allowed me to go through hell so he could use me as a tool to help others see heaven on this earth, whereby one day heaven. That's deep. I got to tell you, that's deep. And to be buried on page 13, I mean, that is deep. Uh, and I heard Pastor Bob Petty. He talked about your anointed word, and Bishop Deagle,
There
is
you
that his
go.
name? Daigle.
Yes.
He said that yours is a story of both trauma and triumph. Uh, More emphasis on the trauma. I mean, on the triumph than the trauma. Uh, it's a wonderful book. We never talked about how people could get this book if they wish to purchase it. How about they go about doing that?
Right now,
Well, there's
if anyone would like to, I'm sorry,
Go right ahead.
Kwuam, did you say
no, I was
something?
going to tell them how to book.
Go ahead.
So there's a couple different ways you can get it right now. You can go to Ms. Marie's website. You go to Marie Hardy Ministries .com and just go there, MarieHardy Ministries.com, and you'll be able to buy the book, purchase the book there. Or you could go to the Brooklyn Bridge Media website, and it'll bring you to her site as well, and that's brooklynbridge-media.com. We are working on this week having it up on Amazon, so it'll be up on Amazon very soon. If you decide to purchase it through Amazon, then make sure you leave a review. Once you've read the book or read a couple chapters of it, make sure you leave a review. That helps us out a lot. And we're, I'm in talks with getting it in some of the actual bookstores, Barnes and Noble and some other places. I'm in talks with some people to have it in there. We may even do a much smaller book signing at one of those, Barnes and Nobles around the city. But yeah, that's where you can get the book for the most part, is on Miss Marie's website or on the Brooklyn Bridge Media website.
I know the Barnes and Noble up at was it over at 124 in Web Gen? I think they over the avenues. I think they'd be very, very welcoming.
Yeah,
to your car. I think they'll be
good.
very welcome. Check out that venue. And I'm going to go to both of you individually. I'll start with you. What is your message? What is your message?
So overall, my message is that you, meaning anyone that is watching, listening, you were created for one purpose, and that one purpose was to serve God and glorify Him forever. And every single, I said this at the other night, that when you were in your mother's womb, you weren't in there filling out a piece of paper, requesting what giftings and talents you would have, what kind of an influence you would have. You didn't even request what family you would be born into, or what skin color you would have, or what culture you would be born into. It just, God ordained it for you, and He ordained it for a purpose. And so my message is that, first of all, you've got to find out who you are in Him, right? Find out who He is. If you don't know Him, you need to know Him, because He's the one that created you. And then find that out first. And then secondly, once you find that out, then you find out why you were put on this planet in the first place. Not everybody was made for the same thing. I wasn't made to be an astrophysicist for Jesus. You put a calculus book in front of me, I'll probably have a heart attack. But if you put anything creative in front of me, I can do it. And vice versa. So, but your job is to find out what it is that God put you here for, and then run after that with your full whole heart, 100%, and make a difference for His kingdom, because that's the only thing that will last. Everything else is going to pass away, but what you do for Him is going to last, and you're going to be held accountable by God for what you did with what you were given. So if any message I could get out to people is, you have been given the ability by God. It's already in your hands to do it, to do what He's called you to do, to make a difference for Him, and nothing else matters. No other difference matters. Everything else falls underneath that. The earth and the needy and all that, it's great. That all falls underneath that. But finding out what God has put you on this planet for should be paramount, and is the most fulfilling for your life.
I think one thing you said about people jumping in and with both feet,
Yes,
in pursuing their dream, and I know that if they come to you, you're going to give them that extra added push that they might need.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like now, so now I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a quick little story. So you got to also be self-aware, right? And I want you to, my message for people is jump in with both feet, but make sure, okay, this is key. Make sure that there is some evidence in your life with other people that what you're jumping into is something that you've been equipped to do. So a quick little story. I was traveling with a pastor years and years and years ago when I was doing music with him, and he was telling me about, he was standing next to this lady during the beginning of the service, and she was howling at the moon during worship. It was like she sounded like when she was singing, it sounded like glass breaking or whatever. It was just terrible, right? And he had his hands like this, and he had his hand in his ear, made it seem like he was really hearing God, but he was trying to plug his ear, right? So he goes and does a sermon, he goes and preaches or whatever, and then he preaches about purpose and preaches about finding God's calling for your life and stepping out in faith and jumping in with both feet. And then he had other people come up, and he's like, if you feel like you want to jump into what God's called you to do and you want some prayer about that, come up. So lo and behold, this lady comes up, right? And he goes to pray for her, and he goes, so what is it that you feel like God's called you to do? And she goes, I feel like I'm supposed to be a singer for Jesus, right? And he was like, no, ma'am. He was like, you've got gifted and talents, but not that. So, more of the story is, I want you to jump in with both feet, be passionate about it, but at the same time, be practical. That's one of the things that Brooklyn Bridge does, is that we make sure that we help you get your eyes up, looking at the moon, aiming for the moon, but your feet on the ground as well. So that you can be as successful at jumping in and not wasting your time on chasing things that are not what you were supposed to do.
And I would like to remind everybody that his website is www.brooklynbridge-media.com. That's www.brooklynbridge-media.com. And those of you who are aspire to write or to sing or to share your talents with the world that edify our beloved in heaven, please, he's the man to contact. Do that right away. Even if you have the inkling of an idea, maybe that little twinkling will go to a flame. I'll repeat this again: www.brooklynbridge-media.com. We'll probably put that on our site also. Mrs. Marie Hardy. One thing I noticed about your book release date, I've heard adults that I've spoken to sing your praises many times. It was remarkable to me to see how many young people were at this event, how many young people were there who paid attention. And your event, I tried to capture it on photos, but didn't have my best camera, using my iPhone. But you were all ages, all races. There was just a diverse group, and even there was a diverse group coming up, speaking about you and lifting you up. Remarkable. So what is your message?
Mr. Norman, my message with all of my heart is, I do not want anyone, unless God has called them to live the life that I've lived. I do not want to see kids come up the way I came up, without love, without affirmation, without letting them know that, that this world is hard. And I want to be the one to come from. Look, I even start in the womb, Mr. Norman, when someone is pregnant. I will ask them, is it okay if I touch your stomach to pray over that child? And from there to them growing up, I want to I want them not to experience
Mhm.
what I've experienced, if
Yes.
you will. And so, um, and one thing I've always asked God was that I've asked him to keep me young. And someone might think that that's vanity. Call it what you want. But one of my prayers has always been, God, keep me young, keep me full of vitality and youthfulness. And I believe seeing those young people is an answer to prayer, because how do you receive that? You get it from the young people. You'll see, Mr. Norman, you know, the Matute family. You know,
Yes.
JJ and Millie. Millie, I came into the church and Millie stayed up under me, and people thought that she was my child. And no one knew what the connection was. I knew what the connection was because God had expressed to me that she was a chosen one, and I was supposed to help her parents to rear her that way. And then JJ, you know, he wants to chew my arm off. He likes to sniff me. So then, you know, and so I learned that, and having all these young people, I speak real with them. And when I speak real with them, they're like, "Oh, Miss Marie," and I'm like, "Miss Marie, nothing," because I want them to know that, listen, I understand what you're going through. I know what you're saying. I know what you're feeling. And it's even harder for them now than when we were growing up. And so I want to be that buffer, if you will, that if they can't eh, go speak to their parents, if they can't go speak to a counselor, if they don't want to go to speak to the preacher, that they could come to me, because I could dance with them, I can joke with them, but I also want them to know there's safety there. There's safety. And when we need to shift from the playing to the counseling, that we're able to do that, that they can receive the information that they need. That's why I love being around the young people, because I want to see them become all that they could be. The younger ones, the middle ones, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, to be able to affect everybody. And my story is a story that can affect every age. It goes across, and nationality has never been a thing for me. Our son is married to a Caucasian woman, so we have interracial grandbabies. And so that was never a thing for me, because actually God gave me more grace with the Caucasian people in the past than my own color. And so all national, I see people color as a thing of
Mhm.
beauty to show God's creation, because we were all created out of dirt, and dirt comes in every color
Mhm.
that we are. And so I want to just look through their eyes and let them know you are loved, you are important. That's meow, because you're God's creation. And so every color, every creed, even if someone doesn't believe in what I believe, I still want them to know, listen, you matter, because maybe out of that they may come to know the truth.
Right.
So my goal is to get people to know the love of Jesus Christ. And the way we do that is by showing love one to another.
Fantastic. I remind you, Mrs. Hardy has her own website, which is Marie Hardy, MarieHardy Ministries, Ministries.com. That's mariehardyministries.com. And you can pick up a copy of this book. Can't get it right. Kind of hard to do that. That's the way the book looks. It's an easy read, and for you seniors, and fantastic. And just to, Marie is one of the things that she said so many things uh, at the event on Friday, but she said, quote, sometimes I feel as if I am not doing enough for the kingdom. That's the Kwuam Adams and Mrs. Marie Hardy. We at WCEG thank you so very much for participating in what I am sure is an enlightening program for many people. And I am anxious to share it over YouTube and Facebook as soon as we get off of this air, because I think
Thank you so much.
everybody needs to hear this. It'll be on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're going to throw it all out there for everybody. And oh, want me to hold up the book again? Because people want to know. Here we go. And it's called, oops, I have trouble doing this. Did we get it all there? Let's see.
I got it too.
Okay. Okay. There we go.
Thank you
This is
so much
for everybody. It's our pleasure. And I'll be there.
Thank you so much, Mr.
I
Norman.
want to be
Thank
there.
you. Thank you
Thank you.
so
Our
very
pleasure.
much. God
Thank
bless.
you. And to all our listeners, I hope you will join us on our next installment of Issues and Answers, which should be in about 2 weeks. I have two special guests lined up that I think you enjoy just as much as you enjoyed these folks here today. So thank you very much. Take care.